I say, confusing, and it's unfair, and we won't even get into that. But anyway, Eaton at that time had to come up with a very small portion to finish those buildings, and the electorate here did vote those in. Other than that, in all those years, I've never voted for any increases. In fact, it was petitioned at the school several times, we're going to need to get more money, we need to get more money. And I didn't buy that. We didn't cut, we hadn't cut, they still haven't cut, in my opinion. I've shared this with the current superintendent. You could ask her. You haven't cut near enough for us to ask for more money. Same message to the city manager at Eaton, before and now. We have staff there that would like to go for more money. We haven't cut near enough to ask for more money. So, you know, we have to operate, we have to perform services, provide services, but we also have to do it frugally and conservatively, and not so foolish to think at some time you'll have to ask for more money, but it's not now. While on school board, I'll talk about that first. You know, we have about 200, it varies, 240 to 50 employees at Eaton Schools at any given time. When I left, we had about a $21 million budget, so it's a fairly substantial operation. We operate in the green all the time, at least while I was there. I hope it continues that way. We have very good support from the community, I think. Renewals were always passed pretty overwhelmingly. We built 2 new school buildings while I was president of the board. I was heavily involved in those construction projects, design and then construction. As I'm sure many of you know, we built an athletic facility completely with donated money at a tune of over $6 million. No tax money in that whatsoever. I chaired that committee as well. Was actively involved in that on a really almost a daily basis. Enjoyed it very much, learned a whole lot. Learned a whole lot about how the state government will stick it to the local governments, believe me. But we fought with them, and we came out with, I think, pretty good buildings and pretty good athletic facilities. At Eaton City Council, once again, we have not voted ever to raise taxes there. We have, of course, raised sewer and water fees a few times. That's part of the progression, and as you understand, those funds are set aside from the general fund, and you have to have money in there to operate and run your sewer plants and things like that. Don't always like that, but that's some of the costs of doing business, unfortunately. Other things besides those 2 elected offices, I'm a member of the Eaton Rotary, have been for several years. I've served as the co-chairman for the Eaton After Prom, which is something that the Rotary has done for the Eaton schools for 47 years now. And we put that on after their prom and provide activities and gifts and door prizes and food and what have you. I was voted Rotarian of the Year this year by our Rotary Club, which I was very honored to receive. I have been a member of the Fraternal Order of Police for, well, I don't know how long, since the mid-'80s, I guess. I've served as president and treasurer, secretary, both of that organization. I was a member of the Little League Board of Directors here in Eaton for a few years, served as treasurer for 3 or 4 years, and I would tell you when I took that job over, as with a lot of volunteer groups, there wasn't a lot of oversight and management, and at that point they were borrowing money every year just to keep the lights on, essentially, at the end of the season. And by the time I left that job, we paid all the bills, paid all the loans, and we had money in the bank. I don't know what it is today, but that's how I left it. You've got to watch your spending, obviously. As most of you probably know or may know, I work at the Sheriff's Office, and soon I will have been there 35 years. Started there right out of high school in '81. I've served in several positions there. I currently serve as a major and the jail administrator and 911 coordinator, and what that means is I oversee the daily operations of the jail, try to bring us as much in compliance with the state statutes and codes and jail standards that we can. We are not meeting them all, I'll tell you right up front. Most of it is because of personnel and money, but that's something most counties are dealing with. I'm also the 911 coordinator, and I oversee the 911 operation to some degree. It's a long kind of a story, but I deal mostly with the technical portion of that, not so much the employees yet. That's going to be changing in time, but it's not changed yet. Part of my job also entails overseeing the courthouse security, and I also oversee the Special Deputies Unit, which is the deputies you see working the fair and the pork festival and things like that. I have worked with the Fair Board and the Pork Festival Board and all the local schools that are in the county anyway that we service for a number of years, doing the scheduling for all those events and interacting with those people. So I have a pretty good view. I have probably worked every fair for the last, I would say, 35 or 36 years, so I'm pretty well versed in how that runs down there and the deficiencies that may exist. Pork Festival Board, have a very good relationship with them. Have likewise worked with them for probably nearly that same amount of years, I suppose. So I think I bring a lot of diverse knowledge and experience. I think I can offer a lot to the Preble County. I have seen the side of the county operation from the employee side, basically. I've also dealt with it from the city council side. It hasn't always been that pleasant, but you know, that's life. Everyone's not always going to agree. That's just the way it goes. But I think I can bring a good conservative, common sense approach. That's what I've done in my other seats that I've held. Been elected several times so far, so I feel pretty good about that. People must like something. Or maybe they just had no one else to vote for, I don't know. But you know, I don't run for office to be particularly well-liked or give people answers they want. I'm going to tell them the truth. And if you don't want to know the truth, then don't ask, because that's what I'm going to tell you. And you know, that's not always very popular. A lot of people running for office do just what the lady that left said. They grease your palm and then move on, and that's not me at all. And you know, you're certainly welcome to talk to anybody you want at the school or at the city, either one. I'm sure they'll give you the same message, that it is what you see. You know, there's no game plan. And it may not always be the popular answer, but it's what I believe to be the right answer, and it's what's good for the whole, not for any one person or small group. So.
Would you mind taking some questions?
Sure.
Okay, I have one.
Okay.
Would you give us your thoughts on the proposed 911 dispatch merger?
Well, yes. You know, I served on that committee. I don't know the name of that committee, whatever it's called, but I served on that committee for however long that went on, a year or so. And I really thought that the committee had come up with a very viable plan. I think that it makes good sense to put it all together. You know, and just a brief history. I've been around long enough that, you know, when the 911 was brought in here, in I think the early 90s, I believe it was.
80s.
I'm sorry?
80s.
But whenever it was. I was here, I don't remember when. But when it was brought in, the technology at that time was much different than it is today. And the decision was made way back then. I wasn't part of that, but, you know, keep separate for redundancy and backup and all these things. But today, backup and redundancy is a much different thing. If I can get network access somewhere to the internet, I can have radios and stuff online in no time. So the need to have separate standalone facilities is much less than it once was. The cost of maintaining these systems is ever increasing, and we can like it or not like it, but it's the way it is. The companies that put this stuff out, they know they have a product everyone needs, and they're going to charge what they want to charge, and you either pay it or you don't, and you have to pay it, let's face it. At the same time, the demand of the public for these services is ever there. I mean, they want that, they would dial that phone, they expect an answer, they expect things to be happening, and that requires us to do a lot, buy a lot, you know. So more directly to your point, I think that consolidation is a wonderful idea. In the long run, it will save money. In the long run, we won't be buying, when I say we, I'm saying taxpayers, whether it's city, county, whatever. We're not buying 2 or 3 different sets of this stuff. We're buying stuff in one place. We're manning one site. It cuts down on duplication. It's cutting down on transfer of call times. Even though systems today are pretty advanced and it's not that much, still, if everybody's in one room, it's much quicker. It's much easier. Everybody knows what's going on. There was much ado at the time about, you know, this being a big deal to switch this, and we had this study which I opposed all along. I think we wasted $50,000, quite honestly, on this study that told us exactly what we already knew. It was pretty straightforward. It's Eaton and it's us. It's not a big deal. We already dispatch everybody else in the county besides Eaton, so there's not a lot to study with this. It's either do it or not. The question has always been the funding. And I know there's all different feelings on that. I thought we'd come up with a decent plan. We put it out to the taxpayers. If they didn't like it, if they didn't vote for it, then obviously you have to find a new plan.
Would you just tell us briefly what that plan was, just for review?
That plan...
The plan that you liked.
The plan, as I recall it, was the county commissioners would put on the ballot a I forget. 1.5, okay, mill, which was projected. The sheriff did copious amounts of crunching numbers to come up with what we thought would sustain that for, I believe it was a 10-year period, safely. And mind you, this committee met for the longest time. 1 or 2 of the commissioners were involved in that committee at the time, as was people from the city, various fire and police people. It wasn't just like 3 or 4 of us. It was a dozen or better people on this committee. So the thought was to put that levy out to equally charge, for lack of a better word, all the citizens in the county to pay for this service. One of the hitches, I'll speak for me personally, was that if the commissioners wouldn't dedicate, because obviously we pay for that now out of our general budget, the sheriff's office. They wouldn't dedicate that money to stay with the sheriff, so we could then increase road patrol, which is desperately needed, increase the correction staff, which is desperately needed, and I can talk about that all day, but I'm not running for sheriff, so. But, you know, these things that we're already short on, we had huge layoffs in 2008, we've gained about that much back, you know, and I'm not complaining, I understand money can only go so far, but it's a reality. So it took a long time to work that out. Finally, the commissioners did agree that if this was put on and passed, that and they would leave that money in the sheriff's budget that was already there for dispatching, and then we could increase those other things. The city of Eaton, as I understand, I wasn't on council then, made the same agreement or made the same statement that they would leave that money with their police department because they also lost personnel, and they are down as well. So the thought being that that levy, if passed, would generate all the money needed to run dispatch. It would be kind of, I won't say standalone, but it would have its own funding source. It would not have to rely on the fluctuations of everything else. It would be there. Then the sheriff and the police chief could, you know, have those other funds to increase what we all believe needs to be done. Again, if it didn't pass, then we're back to square one. I know there was a lot of discussion about maybe we could just fund it within in-house and all that. I don't know enough of the facts. When you ask for funding sources and things, sometimes at the courthouse, you don't always get the same answers. So I'm just being blunt about it. So I don't know if the county can sustain it, then yeah, maybe they should pay for it. I'm not sure I'm convinced of that. I don't know the answer to that, quite honestly.
So you're saying the money that they're already using for 911, the city and the county, is not enough to support a merged dispatch? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I don't know the city. At that time, I wasn't involved in the city, and so I don't know all the numbers for them at the time. For us, we obviously have enough in our budget now to run dispatch.
Okay.
That's not an issue for us. I mean, the commissioners budget that every year for us in our general, it comes out of our budget right now. The thought with this was that, you know, when we had some money deficiencies in '08, for example, when these layoffs came, well, that hit dispatch. And I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of times we got one dispatcher in that room. And, you know, when you're talking one dispatcher in that room, and 911's ringing, and the phone's ringing, and you got 2 fires going, and a car wreck, and anybody can, I'm sure if we talk to the sheriff, anybody can come watch anytime they want. It is overwhelming. And people expect that phone to be answered. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I believe what I heard you just say, you know, when the proposal for the levy was coming out.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I come and listen to the pitch for that. Yeah, I was expecting, well, we're going to get economies of scale because, yeah, we're going to consolidate these 2 dispatch centers. And, you know, from that, we're going to get the economies of scale. And you people are going to get a tax rebate. Well, you know, that's not what it was about. It was about
That's correct.
expanding. But what I just heard you say, well, yeah, you're going to consolidate, but at the same time, in that consolidation process, we're going to return some employees that had been lost in 2008, and this and that and the other. So it wasn't just the consolidation of the 2 911 facilities.
Well,
It included expansions in other areas. You know, to a very simplistic point of view, if you're already funding 911 services here, and you're already funding 911 services here, and then you merge, you only have 1 911 services, you've got money left over. Right? So why would there be a need to go out and offer voters are dumb in a box of rocks, man. You put a levy on the ballot and they'll approve it. Right? I'm convinced of it. But why would you ask for more money if you already had the money to run 911 services to begin with?
Well, because number one, there would be no reduction in employees. All you're doing is bringing employees from the city in the same number, our people in the same number, that would staff 2 or 3 depending on the shift at all times. So there's no savings coming in money. our employees, excuse me. That was made, I think, very clear from the onset. The economy of scale, to use your words, or the savings comes from not having to buy the same stuff at the county and the city. That's why I say it's not necessarily savings to everyone at every time. The county has already invested in these upgrades because we had to move forward. The city has not done that, kind of waiting to see how this played out, I think. But, you know, those people will be spending the same money that the county spent, which is pretty sizable, if something doesn't happen. We think just operationally it's a better deal to have it all in one place. The side effect of that was, if approved, and if both bodies agreed, like I say the commissioners and the councils, that extra money could put people back onto the road patrols, which, again, that's a separate debate, but I think everyone agrees is probably a little short. We have less deputies on the road now than we had 10, 12 years ago.
Okay, may I pick up there? All right, I went to that commissioners meeting, and the sheriff said that the operation of the merged 911 center would be $133,000 savings over the taxpayer money that's paying for the two separate ones now. So it would be an overall savings of $133,000. Was that correct? I'm pretty sure that's what the amount was.
We'll debate
Okay.
that on that. Could be.
All right. And then because taxpayer money is already bringing in $133,000 more than what is needed for the consolidated emergency call center. And then they're going to put a 1.55 mil levy on the ballot and call it a 911 consolidation levy. That's a lie, because what it's for is for increased road patrol, increased corrections staff, and not that those things aren't needed, okay? I'm not in any way minimizing the importance of those things. But if that's the purpose, then don't call it a 911 levy, because that's dishonest. That's like saying grandma's going to die on the bathroom floor because we need corrections officers. That's, I mean, if it's an general operating cost levy, then let's call it that, so the taxpayers know where their taxpayer dollars are going.
Well, the levy was written in such a fashion that that's what it would be used for.
Okay.
Period.
But presenting it as a
But-
911 levy is dishonest.
I don't
Well-
think, I think what they're saying, and what, I know where you're coming from, but this is going to independently fund it outside of that.
Right, that levy would have only funded that. Couldn't have been used for anything else with the ballot language.
And
Okay?
the money was already there. The money for the,
You're right.
we
I
paid.
agree with that.
Then
But
what was the levy for?
It was to independently
to
fund
give it
it,
an independent source of funding.
and all that other money is
Wasn't
gonna stay
every year having to be
in the
negotiated.
individual
So what
places.
you're already
Yeah.
paying for 911 is going to be, and the public wouldn't be notified of that? Again,
Well, if I could finish,
It's
yeah.
technically
Sheriff and
right,
I
though.
had, because the commissioners had told us they were gonna put it on the ballot. The sheriff and I had already started going out and doing public presentations, and we had a PowerPoint and all this, and we explained all this, and we would have continued to explain it.
that wasn't explained at the meeting I attended. They
Well,
had
that
the
wasn't the
video-
purpose of that meeting either, ma'am. I mean, that
Actually, it was.
was the purpose of that meeting, was for the committee to make a presentation to the commissioners. That's what the purpose of that meeting was. But anyway, we did some public presentations, because we thought it was going on the ballot. We had met with 2 or 3 or 4, I can't remember now, civic groups, mostly around Eaton to start with. We met with the Fire Association and a couple others, and that is how it was presented, and that's how it would have been presented. I suppose we still have the PowerPoint, probably, I don't know, but
Mr. Renner, and this
Yes.
is kind of related, and it's really hard to say this tactfully without sounding like a jerk, and I hope you don't take it that way.
No,
Right? But, you know, you've been very active in Eaton City Council and very active with the Sheriff's Department. Are you able to separate yourself from those loyalties and see yourself as a representative of the taxpayers of Preble County?
well, I think so. I think that I sit on negotiating committees at the school on behalf of the administration with the unions. I'm currently sitting on negotiating committee at the city with the police department, who I'm probably closest with of anybody. And you could ask whoever you want, let you decide how disassociated I can be, believe me. There's a right way and a wrong way to do things, and if you can't be friends with me and accept that, then we won't be friends. It's that simple.
Would it be accurate to say then that your elected commissioner, the 911 consolidation issue comes before the commissioners and you're going to vote to put it on the ballot? Would that be accurate to say?
I would vote to put it on the ballot. And if the voters reject that, then obviously we've got to figure out Plan B. I think that's how it's supposed to work. I mean, you know, I don't get to, in my position, I mean, obviously any elected official gets to make some decisions. But some things need to go back to the people, and this was one. I mean, again, I think we started out wasting $50,000. We could have done this a year before we did, and put it out there. And if the voters didn't want it, so be it. I'm not sure what the next step would have been. We didn't get that far, you know.
Okay.
And that's how this committee ended up. This is what, we're gonna put this out, we're gonna see how it goes, and if it doesn't, we'll come back to this table and figure out something new. Personally, I don't think that's unreasonable. I think you give people a chance to speak and vote, and every group to voice its opinion and, you know, have its campaign, and, you know.
That's fine, I just wanted to get the accurate answer that, yes, you would put that on. Okay, because your opponent, which I
Would it be called a
glad to see
911
Chris
levy?
here tonight, has not put that on there, and I'm happy that it's not been on there, to be quite
Well,
honest.
certainly, that's, you know, well, I would tell you that the ballot language at the time, that's what it was, yes. But again, with the explanation, it's not, you can't just, you know, I know how it was going to be presented because I was involved in it. So
Well, let me
that-
ask you this, what would you do different than Chris has been doing for 2 terms? I mean, they got like $4.5 million, they got a real good balance in the general fund. What would you do different?
I think relations between most of the offices and the courthouse and the commissioner's office are as bad as I've ever seen them.
Now, I appreciate that, because it's my understanding at the state of the county thing, the current president said everything's going great. So we have a
Everybody has their
difference
own
of opinion. Okay,
If you
that's
sample
fine.
the other elected officials, I bet you get a different answer.
Oh, I know that.
I think a lot of times things are really
But-
short-sighted. I think that decisions are
Could
made
you give
without.
an example of short-sighted? Just,
Well, I mean, if I may.
Sure.
I think a lot of times things were done and decided that, you know, people that probably should be consulted or talked with are not. And I'll give you one example, which turned out pretty good. But a decision was made, I don't know, it's been 2 or 3 years ago now, to put new security cameras at the courthouse,
Mhm.
which I think were desperately needed. What was there was completely insufficient. It's only by accident, and I say we at the sheriff's office got wind of that. We're charged with courthouse security,
mhm.
which I'm in charge of, and I went going down and questioned, why haven't we been involved in this? I mean, we are responsible for this. We run this. Shouldn't we have some input? It was only after we raised this question that we then had input, and again, it turned out okay. That's just one example. How do you talk about security in your building without talking to the people that's in charge of the security and responsible for it? And will be held accountable if something happens. That's us, you know.
Well, and again, I
That's one
understand
example.
your point of view, but that sounds like a pretty petty turf war. If they're putting in
Well, I
new
think it
cameras
is.
that I disagree. If you're saying the cameras there are not sufficient and they're addressing
Mm-hmm.
an issue, and you've got, what, 42-inch pretty good sized monitors, newer cameras, I have security cameras in mine. You know, some of those cameras can clean up, but I congratulate them for getting new
I do
cameras.
too.
So
Didn't
it's,
question that.
you know, I'm sure there's other issues, but somebody putting in new cameras that you admit you needed
Sure.
and being upset because you weren't
Not
consulted,
upset.
it is,
I'm not upset.
well,
Don't turn my
it sounds
nose
like
now.
a little bit like a turf war
No,
when
it's
they
not.
do have them.
This is something that happens routinely, though.
It happens routinely, okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, if I may piggyback on Ellen's and Jeff's point to a degree. Conflict of interest. As a member of the sheriff's department, you're a member of the executive branch of government. And executive branches of government want money. If you're sitting on a commission and still in that executive branch.
I would not be,
Okay,
could not be.
yeah, that's what I wanted to hear.
Yep. If elected, I'll be tendering my resignation. Yes, sir.
What was your decision to run as an independent versus being in the primary with everybody else?
Well, I've thought about running a couple times in the past, and I just didn't. I have a lot of friends in the Republican Party, but quite honestly, I don't like a lot of things that goes on there. And I've shared that with several of them very openly. No big secret there. You could ask several of them and they would tell you the same thing. I don't think that, I don't support I would or wouldn't have had. That's not the issue. It's nothing really against them. They're all entitled to their opinion, just like all of you, just like we all are, you know. But I just didn't want to get involved in that, quite honestly. I've watched them, again, I've been there 35 years. I've watched the party support. I'm not saying this now, so don't take this now, but I've watched them support a lot of candidates over time that were not worthy of office, and they just kept supporting them. I have a problem with that, and I've shared that with them. So, not against them, the Republican Party. I just didn't really want to run as that.
Well, thank you very much for coming.
Okay, thank you.
I apologize for not getting here sooner.
Oh, that's all right, no.
And I thought you gave me.
Feel free to email or call if you have any other questions or comments.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Day?
Again, I appreciate the invitation. I apologize. I thought I'd gotten back to you and I hadn't. That was my bad. But I do appreciate the invitation. Most of you know who I am. Been a lifelong resident of Preble County, live in West Alexandria, family, grandkids, just like Joe, family's everything. I mean, Joe and I got a lot alike. I'm missing my 10-year-old's ball game right now, so it's tournament time. So that was a tough call, but you know, been in the active in our community and in our village. Been in the government sector. Most of you know this all my life. Been a big, as Joe, I can go through several projects that I've been involved in West Alexandria, other communities. I guess the bottom line is, you know, this is my 7th year or 8th year as commissioner, my 2nd term. When I walked into the office, I think everybody knows that that was in '09. The economy was terrible. I think the 3rd week in office, I believe it was, when I got the phone call from Connie, that our clerk had said, we got a problem. And I said, you know, what's that? She goes, we got less than $90,000 in the bank. And I looked, you know, total silence, and I said, yeah, and we got a $250,000 payroll a week from today. And that's how my term started out. She's on the other end, and Connie's the keeper of the purse up there. Does a very good job with the books, but she said, what are we going to do? I said, well, it's Friday evening, I'm going to dinner with the family. What time can you be in there on Monday? And we started working out on Monday, and we had to obviously go through the cuts, and they weren't pleasant, don't get me wrong. We had to cut across the board, but the bottom line was 5 of the previous 6 years expenditures had exceeded receipts. I mean, that was very plain. We did a presentation for all the elected officials for the Sheriff's Department. You know, I knew that couldn't continue, so we had to do budget cuts. We did the first round in February, maybe March by the time we got to it. We knew we probably had to cut deeper. We had to come back mid-year, which that makes it even more difficult because you're half a year into it. We had to cut again. We got through that. That was not fun. Since then, we've had a balanced budget. We've worked with the elected officials. I will tend to disagree with Joe a little bit. I think we've got a good working relationship with the offices. It boils down to sometimes, and I'll take the camera situation, we can talk about something, and just because we're in the talking stage, people get all excited. The biggest thing when we start those discussions is, number one, how much is it going to cost, and how are we going to pay for it? You know, if we can't bring that to the table, why involve everybody if we don't even think we can fund it to start with? So I think some of those are people getting things out of line. You know, we have to have the discussions as commissioners. Denise has been on there long enough to know that we say things, and all of a sudden it gets back to us that we're doing this or that, and we just basically mentioned that. So I think the working relationship with the elected officials, I think we have a pretty good working relationship. I think that moving forward, you know, we do have a decent case balance. The big question is, what's that magic number? I don't know. I've asked, every time I go to Columbus, we're in commission conference, I ask that same question. Everybody's got a little different view on 10%, 50%, you know, whatever. I just know that if we would have had some cushion back in '09, it sure would have made things a lot less painful to figure out where we were at. One of the things that we've managed to talk about relationships and things of that nature. You know, we've got a great working relationship with the chamber. We've got a CVB now, you know, Convention Visitors Business Bureau. The partnership, we're working with our businesses. We're out there trying to promote our businesses. I was on a visit today with a company, and I've been on about 4 of these in the last month. And the one thing that the company said when we're sitting at the table is, you know, what do you need? They don't need anything at this time, but the one thing they said is, we're just glad we've got the partnership here. It's a partnership now. You're at least asking us what you need or what we need and trying to help us. That's been a huge shot in the arm for businesses in Preble County. You know, just forming those relationships, getting out and talking to the business owners. They just like seeing you come through the door. We've been fortunate enough to accomplish a lot of different things. One of the things that I'm probably the most proud of, through a downed economy, through cuts, we've been able to put money back into our infrastructure, put about $1 million into radio system and communications and things at the sheriff's office, $100,000 in securities across the county as far as cameras and things, and we're paying for all that. So there's a lot of counties out there right now that don't have that luxury. They're out there scampering, trying to figure out where they're going to pay to. We're doing another phase of the courthouse renovation. We've got a beautiful courthouse. If we don't take care of it, there's a lot of courthouses that are falling down around the state. We're doing this in phases because it's very expensive. I think this phase is around $30,000. Correct me if I'm wrong, Denise. But that is the lifeblood of that building, and we're all Preble Countians, and I'm sure we're all proud of that building. I mean, out there for Bridges, Bikes, and Blues this weekend. Looks nice, beautiful building. But those are the things that we've been able to do. Paying out of pocket, not having to borrow money, and there's several counties that haven't done that. I think last year we probably did about $1 million worth of improvements, somewhere in that ballpark. By the time you count boiler systems, HVAC at the jail, we did some work at the health department. We did some paving and concrete work around the courthouse. So those are things that a lot of people don't see, but those are the things that we're trying to stay on top of. As we move forward, you know, I've worked hard to reach out to our legislators, work closely with them. I sit on several committees at the state level to try to become informed. I sit on the Ag Committee for CCAO. I sit on the Governments Committee, which is also working on the tax. They work with the Department of Taxation on CAUVs, which is another huge thing that's going to be addressed. I don't know what's going to happen. Unfortunately, they're not doing a whole lot of talking right now till after the election. There's going to be an adjustment. I don't know what that's going to be. They're staying pretty tight-lipped about it. But since I've been in office, tried to reach out to the folks at the state level so we can see where we can bring money back. We've been very fortunate in grants, getting monies to return. We've got some capital bill money that's been very helpful. We just got notification we got another $400,000 for this next cycle for the fairgrounds. Just keep reaching out to see where we can bring dollars back to the county. It's our money, just try to bring it back home. The cuts, local government funds, that money's not going to come back. You know, they sold us the casino money. They said that was going to backfill. Those monies are slowly dwindling down. I think they probably bottomed out, but they're not going to be the fix-all that was originally sold to the public. They're just not working. Local government monies, I'd be surprised if the economy, I feel that there's probably going to be another downturn in the economy. I don't think we've seen the lowest yet. I think after the election we may see some tougher times. And I think they'll be chopping at the rest of the local government fund. So we're fighting hard to try to keep those monies. We're beating up Senator Rezabek Representative Senator Beagle, you know, these monies are really important for us. You know, working with the other communities, trying to get them dollars. There's not a lot of monies out there, but we continually try to pass the money around so every community gets value, takes advantage of these grant and loan dollars. So, you know, I think my track record is being very conservative. Is pretty proven. We're sitting financially in pretty good shape. You know, I just want to continue doing what we're doing and trying to push the county forward, trying to get Preble County on the map. I can tell you the one thing that when I did get elected in '09, when we went to Columbus, Preble County didn't have a voice. I mean, they had a terrible reputation, and since I've been in office, I feel that we've been able to foster that relationship. Got a lot of good contacts. Folks, I know a lot of you don't understand, but that really is huge when you need something to happen back here in Preble County. So continue working on that. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
This isn't actually a question, but it's actually addressed to you know, both of you. You talk about how everything's tapped out. Please keep in mind, families are tapped out. Please do not look at families as a source of augmenting, you know, county and state needs, because we are, at some point, we have to say no, okay? Our families are the most important thing to us. County is very important, don't get me wrong. But please stop looking to the taxpayer as, you know, an unlimited source of, you know, bailout, because we don't have it.
Oh, I totally agree.
You know, and it's making us angry.
I totally agree. I mean, that's why, you know, I've been pretty tight with our budget. That doesn't always make the elected officials happy, but we've kept the line tight. You know, there's needs out there, and I understand the sheriff's needs. I mean, I've talked to the sheriff, talked to Joe about this all the time. I get that, I understand that, but we can only afford so much.
So can we.
Well, and that's what I'm talking. When I say we, I'm saying you, the people. I mean, that's who I work for. I totally get that. There's people out there that can't afford another $10 a month.
Or aren't willing to part with another $10 a month.
Let me ask you this, since I asked Joe. The 911 issue comes back up to be put on the ballot. Do you vote for it?
Well, you know, the biggest issue, and we were looking at that hard, and I guess there's a lot of unknowns. That's why I couldn't put it on the ballot. We know that and Joe went through a lot of the stuff. We know that the plan was to bring the two together. We also know, but we don't know the answers to these questions of, there's talk about minimum staffing levels. There's talk about, Joe, you're going to have to help me, the medical training, whatever they call that.
All that's already enacted. We have 2 years to comply.
But you have to be compliant with all this
2
stuff.
years from a couple months ago.
Right. I mean, that's what they're trying to mandate to us. I mean, they've enacted this. The biggest thing is, and what the questions that I had with all that is, that's great. You can mandate it, but if you can't pay for it, what are you going to do? There was still, when we made that decision, these things weren't enacted. There's a few more other things. Training's a huge issue. Training's a huge issue across the board. I was just in Columbus Friday. We had a lengthy discussion on this. You know, these guys, deputies, are required to have X amount of hours per year, and they've upped that now considerably. They went from 9 this year to 19 next year.
It varies every year.
But that doesn't sound like a lot. But if you're pulling somebody out of here and you've got to backfill that person, that's a lot of money. Plus, if you've got to send them somewhere, that's money to get them there and back. You know, the big key on that is I'm all for training. I think it's great. We gotta figure out how can we afford it, how can we either do it online, how can we do it in-house? We're working with our association to, if those people can get certified and come out and do some of this training, I guess till we get down to the discussion again, I don't know where I stand on that, because if it's something we have to have, the one reason that we were looking at a dedicated funding stream, and that's basically what it was dedicated for that 911, was so that we knew that was funded now and in the future. The biggest thing that I hear from people, and I've actually experienced it in my family, you take someone, especially if they're older, that has an accident, has a health condition, they really don't care what's going on. They want somebody at the end of the phone, and they don't want to put them on hold, and they don't want to be hung up on. And you know, as we were talking about that, I've talked to a lot of people, and that's one of their biggest concerns. Had people coming up saying, you know, I had a medical event and I got put on hold. That's the worst thing that can happen. So, you know, these are things we've got to work through. I don't know at this point until we get back into that discussion.
Now, previously, when this came up, I think it was Denise, said the cost of non-compliance was far less than going along with some of these things. What was it, the fine, or wasn't there some type of fine that,
We would lose half of our wireless 911 money, which is $45,000.
that was the
But the
extent of
cost of compliance was well over $300,000 that piece.
it? Okay, that's what I was
We
getting
would
at.
eventually lose it all, though.
Okay, 90,000 versus
Yeah.
325, still a good deal. To
Well,
not comply.
Part
If
of
you're not the one on the other end of the phone, I think I agree with
Well,
you.
no, well,
Part of that too, though, is the possibility, and this is still being talked about. If you don't comply, they can take your 911 away. We could actually be dispatched out of somewhere from Columbus. They have the technologies there, the capabilities there. They're very serious, the legislatures, and they haven't talked about it because of the election, but they're serious about getting these PSAPs cut down. They're what the dispatch centers are called,
Public safety entry points.
yeah, thank you. But that's one of the things that they throw out there. You know, we're going to get these down because there were so many of them across the state. You know, I guess if I'm standing here, I want somebody that lives in the county that knows the roads. So if someone's disoriented, you can at least talk them through and figure out where they're at. But the technology's there that they could farm these out.
Forgive me if I misunderstand, but isn't the money, taxpayer money, already there to operate the consolidated 911 system? What used to go toward the two separate 911 systems now goes toward the one consolidated one. Isn't that already funded by taxpayer money?
Yes, I mean, in a sense, what you're saying is if it stayed status quo, and if Eden continued to contribute, and it was all put together, yes.
Well, other communities contribute, you know, I mean, that's pretty much standard. So I would, you know, expect that to happen. I mean, Eaton has, you know, a police department that, you know, receives services that the county doesn't. You know, I mean, it's a given. You know, that's just the way it's done.
But we also dispatch for all the other police departments too.
Eaton does?
No, the sheriff does.
Okay, that's county.
Right.
Right.
That comes back to one of the arguments. Those other communities aren't paying.
That's exactly my point.
Yeah.
They should be.
Yeah.
Well, and there's a double-edged sword because, okay, you make the communities pay for a dispatch, then you're gonna be losing police on, you know, law enforcement on that end of it, which they assist the sheriff department. I mean, it's a double-edged sword, so there were a lot of balls up in the air trying to figure this out on what is the best way to go, route to go down. One of the other things that was in the mix there are 5 towers that would need upgrade to the tune of almost $1 million to comply with the new bandwidths and all that stuff. You know, that was another part of this. And I can say this, unfortunately, Joe touched on it, but the technology as far as communications is not going to get any cheaper. It just keeps evolving, it keeps getting more expensive, it keeps getting more specialized. Do I agree with it, guys? I don't agree with it, trust me.
Well, that's the time to come for it with a 911 levy, when there's a need to fund 911, additional expenses. But to build a cushion, families don't have cushions, that's not the purpose of, of taxpayer funds. Not that it's wrong to have it when you can, but to go to the taxpayers for a cushion, it just isn't right.
Well, and like I said, when we said we were going to look at going down that path, I wasn't sold that we were going to see any savings, 100%. I mean, I'm sorry.
Well, the city of Eaton was supposed to come out with $130,000 a year of excess money that was at that time going toward 911 services.
I'm very skeptical that there'll be savings, because it just, the more you put together, the more it ends up costing at some point. I'm sorry. It just, unless there's something that you can eliminate, and if you're not eliminating people, that's your cost. So.
Chris, isn't the sheriff, didn't he apply for a grant for those additional powers that you mentioned earlier?
They looked at some money. I don't think they actually applied for that. I don't think those towers for the grant we felt would be a good fit.
Okay, and I just want to ask about compliance. Are you speculating that in the future we won't be compliant, or whether there's a need for additional money for compliance, but right now, are we compliant?
Right now, that's a tricky question. We're not, we don't meet the standards that they would like you to see. The minimum of 2 dispatchers and stuff, we have 2 years to get that right.
Correct, 2 years from the adoption.
But they would like to see that now in certain instances, in times when volumes are certain levels and things of that nature.
It just seems to me like Emmett said, if you're combining the two, then there would be more dispatchers. And it would be cheaper because they're in the same building and they're working with one unit. You see where the confusion is? Like,
yeah,
just
I mean,
don't get it.
In the short term, it's not going to be, because there's going to have to be things done to allow another dispatcher in there. There's 2 stations now. They need a third station, things of that nature.
What do you mean by station?
Consoles.
It's a monitor.
You mean a chair?
Well,
That's a monitor and a
yeah,
chair?
and I'm not. It's not a station, a console.
Dispatch console.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's a monitor with all the hardware and all the logistics and the brains, so that when they're sitting there and the maps pull up and all that stuff,
Okay.
so that they can have 3 people could actually be sitting there looking at 3 different things or 4 different things at the same time.
Let me ask you this, if all this stuff is popping up, maps and everything, whether that person sitting in Preble County or sitting in Columbus, they'd be looking at the same thing, wouldn't they?
Could be.
And on these towers, are we talking brand new towers, or are we talking antennas on top of
Just the
towers?
software and the communication
Okay.
side. Towers are, some of them we don't even own.
I know that, but I think there's some confusion
Yeah,
out there
it's-
that we're building new towers, they need replaced or something, it's the stuff
No,
on top. And it
It's
just happens
so
to be
that
expensive.
the radios can talk to each other and communicate.
From a very simplistic point of view, I'm amazed at communications today. I was walking through my wife got a smartphone. I'm not smart enough to use smartphone. And I was walking through the living room, and I hear my wife say, what's the score of the Clemson? What the heck is she asking me that question? And his voice comes back and says, the score of the Clemson game is, it's a automated voice. 911 is a telephone call. You get on the telephone, you have 911, right?
Hmm?
And it goes to this magical place. The police departments already dispatched to their officers. Fire departments already dispatched to their officers. Hospitals get telephone calls and communicate among hospitals and emergency services and whatever, if a cop's, pardon the expression, constable on patrol.
Been called a lot worse.
Well, yeah, it's not a derogatory term,
I
it
know,
stands for
I know.
constable on patrol.
I know what it means.
But a police officer is out on patrol and he encounters an accident and he calls his dispatch back and says, man, we're gonna have to get an ambulance out here, right? Well, no, make it a coroner's wagon, we got 2 dead bodies, right? But why, 911 is an emotional thing. And I see government entities selling tax increases as an emotional thing. Grandma's gonna die on the floor unless we have a new 911 system. Get it in here today, we're gonna put a levy on there, and people say, a levy? Oh yeah, man, I'll vote for that. But, I can't get excited over 3 digits on a telephone, 911. The dispatchers already exist. Emergency services already exist. We have ambulances that charge money for going out and making a call. We have hospitals that charge money for maintaining their emergency rooms. And when I heard they're going to consolidate, I said, well, yeah, cool. They're going to be saving money and whatnot. But spending additional money, hey, it's 3 digits on the telephone, right? Although, I can find the 9, but my phone doesn't have an 11, so maybe I need a smartphone.
And all emergency services become an emotional issue. I understand that. I guess the frustrating part for us sitting here looking at this is just the technology and the cost is what really becomes so frustrating because, and I know, and Joe kind of went through the history, and I remember when they just went to 2 dispatch centers for redundancy and things of that nature because they wanted backup. And then that was the only way they could do it. Now they don't need that because you can do everything. It's something you can hold in your hand almost anymore. But the cost of it is just astronomical. And when, like I said, between the consoles, the radios in their cars, a few other things, we spent a lot of money last year getting them upgraded. And unfortunately, that's what everybody's going to. You're kind of pushed into this. Do I like it? No. But, and I don't know how many there is, and don't want to put Joe on the spot, but most sheriff's department are probably on the marks by now.
A lot of them are.
I mean, that's the system everybody's going to, and I know there were people that said, we'll never get on it, and I see those counties now saying, we're having to get on it because we just can't get communications. They're doing away with the VHF and those type of communications. So that's the frustrating part. I'll admit that. I don't know what the answer is. We just we'll have to continue to look at that and see what hand we're dealt and try to make the best decision. I think at the time when we were looking at that, the reason we stopped it where it was at is because we didn't have enough answers. I didn't have enough answers. I can tell you that. And we need more feedback. And I'm relying heavily on people from Columbus that are dealing with this on a regular basis. So I'd say in the future more information will be pushed down.
Let me throw this out. It's not going to happen, but I take it you two are here for state representatives. You say, if the county doesn't do it, it could get pushed back to Columbus. Why don't 88 counties say, hey, look, you guys keep mandating this, take it back to Columbus. Then it's their problem. They're going to get voted out of office. I understand we're moving towards video and all that stuff, but why doesn't the County Commissioners Association take a stronger position saying, hey, you keep this up, you can have it?
Well, I mean, they've taken some pretty strong stances. I mean, even the Sheriff's Association and some of the others. I mean, we're all fighting, trying to figure out what the best option is. But part of it is it's a catch-22 where the vendors, the technology has evolved, and you got to stay up with the technology to be in the game.
Yeah, but again, if it goes, and it's not going to, I'm just hypothetically, a state goes out there representing 88 counties and says this is what we want. That's more than trying to bargain as just one single county, because you had one cost as Preble County and then you piggybacked on to Montgomery County and got a better deal. So
And I understand what you're
Yeah,
saying.
okay.
And I can tell you the frustration with just trying to get, the new election equipment.
Mm.
And we went through with the e-poll books. And we bit the bullet and got those because it was the right thing to do. But luckily, we waited till late in the game
Mm.
because there were basically 4 vendors in the state, and they don't talk to each other.
Mm.
And some of the ones that went out early, they bought the e-pad poll book. But then after the fact, they didn't realize, well, I need a charger, and I need an extra battery, and I need this, and I need that. And I believe it was Tuscarawas County, they spent about $1 million on e-poll books and had to go back and spend $500,000 in accessories they weren't planning on. So with this by the next after this presidential election, but the next presidential election, we have to have all new voting booths.
Mm.
And the one thing that we keep throwing out there is, can we get one vendor? Can they be standardized? If it's more than one vendor, make them all talk to each other so that you buy a Ford, you buy a Chevy, and you buy a Dodge, they're all work the same and they'll at least talk together. We can't get that accomplished. And that's the frustrating thing, to try to get the communication. So we've been pounding on this, and I'm not saying it's dead yet, but it's been very frustrating. They got down to 3 vendors. But we're looking at another huge chunk of change. And Denise was sitting there beside me in December when they had a panel of state reps and senators up there, and every one of them on the election equipment saying, don't do anything, correct? Yeah. They're like, don't touch it yet. So those are the frustrating things, and we're hammering on them, don't get me wrong, but that's very frustrating, Jeff.
These compliance issues, and I've just got one more question about this, was that a law that was passed?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know who wrote that bill?
I don't remember the number. I can get that information.
Yeah, if you could send that to me, I appreciate it.
Last fall, Joe, you, I, and the sheriff went to Columbus and went to a seminar, basically. Here's what is on the table. And I don't even know if it had a House bill at that time, did it? I don't think it had a number signed to it. But these are the things that everybody's asking. A lot of people were involved, so I don't know what the final bill came down to. I wasn't watching it that close. But I'll do some research and get that for you. Anybody else have a question?
Well, I got one. Because as I'm thinking on this, one of the things the sheriff mentioned is one of the reasons for all this updating was at some point you're going to have video in the cars or something along the line. Am I remembering that right? Or
We're gonna have to accept texting on 911 at some point, and video will be coming
Yeah.
at some point. We're gonna be required to accept that. They don't have that worked out yet.
okay, but
Off
that
the
would be
911.
okay. That would obviously up the cost of these things.
Correct.
Yeah, they're looking at, I don't mean to butt in, Joe, but
It's your time.
all the new cell phone and those enhancements, being able to be, if somebody's, speaks to their smartphone, call 911 and that type of stuff, and actually you can get the video to work. And
I think we all realize if we think about it, that's coming down the line. I guess my next question, which I was segueing into, is would either of you support video of the commission meetings? I mean, if Manfred Schreier can sit there and have a show on Facebook Live, why can't we have video of the commission meetings? That, if you want a more engaged public, that can see what's going on. I mean, you don't want some guy just putting out the audio out there and cause some trouble that way. Just let the people watch it live. Or it's sitting there, on a server for a month or 2 months. Anybody support that?
I don't know how many people's going to. I guess
You don't know because you haven't done it.
But I've asked other commissions that do it,
Uh-huh.
I don't get a whole lot of positive feedback on it, I really don't. I'm just saying.
Okay.
I mean,
I wouldn't have a problem with it. I can tell you that when I was on the school board, we didn't even record the meetings by sound.
Mhm.
Not only did we start recording them by sound, we started putting them on our website because I think that's the right thing. You know, we didn't do video.
I agree. No, and I agree.
But I think it should be put on there.
No, I'll give you an example that I've thrown out there for a number of years. You had a county official speak to the New Paris Council, and I requested what I thought would be audio because I knew they recorded it. I got back a DVD. It cost me $1. The whole meeting. I thought, whoa, if New Paris can do this, and New Paris has financial issues, it's there. Of course, the problem is they have a new clerk, but she doesn't know how to put it on DVD anymore. That's another story.
Unfortunately, with technology, there's always a glitch. We've got a new sound system up there, and there's still...
I know there were still issues with that, and but being a crazy guy to put it on the internet, no, I just thought I'd ask, and thank you for saying yes.
One more question, I won't be really dishonest. Who's bringing all of these additional demands upon the county? Is it the state?
Well, yeah, that's...
Why don't we tell them no?
Good question.
Well, that would be good, but we'd have to get the legislatures and those people to quit. I mean, somebody brings something to them, and
They
then...
have no power to control county monies. They have no authority whatsoever to control county monies.
88 counties come up and say,
That's
we're
right.
not doing it. You know, it's just a
Yes.
problem. And you have a county commissioner
Make me.
association. Well, it doesn't happen.
Isn't it the point that the state, like the federal government to the states, the state provides funds to the county, and the state says, I want you to do this, and the county says, I ain't gonna do that, so I ain't gonna give you any money. Is there not a little quid pro quo? You know, if you want us to give you money, you gotta do what we tell you to do.
Well, that sounds good, well and good in theory, and I'll give you children's services. We're mandated to take care of those children if there's an issue, and we're mandated to pay. I mean, we don't have an option.
What happens if we don't?
Well, I'd say that there's going to be a huge lawsuit,
And what law says that we have to comply with what the state tells us to do with our money? Is there a law that we are breaking?
well, we have to take, there's certain things that we're obligated to do
By what authority?
by statute.
They can't control our county money.
Well, they can't control our county money, but they can mandate on what we have to do.
That's controlling our county
Well,
money.
I guess piggyback on what she had. When Dave Wessler was in there, and I'll grant you things may have changed completely since then, he would often say, there's some counties that hardly pay anything. Now, my question is, how have they gotten away with that, and why haven't we checked with them?
Well, it depends on what you're talking about, but different county elected officials have different philosophies on how they deal with certain things, and you know.
So spending the money is part of your philosophy.
No, but if a judge takes a hard stance on certain
Hey,
cases,
that's a good point.
we
Yeah,
you know, if he says that a child needs to be in custody,
yeah.
or the sheriff makes a decision on, I don't even know what, you know, an example, I don't even know a good example that would keep me from getting in trouble here.
That's
say.
okay.
Well, no, I'm just saying, if he says you go out and Emmett's beating his grandson, somebody's going to jail. That's the directive. You know, and I
State
understand.
law.
Huh?
State law. I mean.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, that's the things that we don't have control over.
I think though, on the children's services, and you brought this up, the county passed a levy last fall. And I think there's a pretty good argument, given the general fund balance, that you didn't need it. And it plays into the 911. I realize it helps independently fund children's services now, and I realize that you spent more last year than the year before, but you also hired somebody to bring those costs down. In 6 months into his tenure, just about, you're putting this ballot on the ballot to raise it. And the argument is on 911, hey, a lot of these people just vote for any tax levy. I mean, everybody wants to help the children, but let's face it, you also have $1 million more in your general fund this year than you did last year, and you funded it last year. That's just my point. Okay.
In my own defense, my grandson is 22 years old, weighs 235 pounds. He just graduated from Missouri State where he played basketball. And he's 6 foot, well, his bio says 6'6", but he's 6'5", has a 12-inch handspan, and quite frankly, I don't think I could beat him up.
Well, maybe he'd be going to jail.
For beating up grandpa.
Yes, I have a question. On any issue, a tax, issue for a tax increase, before it goes on the ballot, does that mean that you approve of it and you help place it on the ballot, or you're not sure, so you let the taxpayers decide,
Well,
or you don't totally support it, but you're still gonna let the taxpayers support it?
No, if I feel we need to put something on, I would be supporting letting the voters make that call, yes, if that's what you're
But
asking.
that means you support it before,
You think it should pass?
you think it should pass, or you would?
Not necessarily, not necessarily. Depending on what it is, I may not
It
agree.
depends on how you present it to the public.
I
Because
don't,
if you have your mind made up and word it in such and such a way, it's gonna pass.
well,
And
but
I would rather.
you may
just-
not agree with it, but you may see the need for it.
Yeah, that still doesn't affect how it's presented to the public. You know,
Well,
it needs, if it's for, general operating costs for the sheriff's department, then it shouldn't be presented as a 911 levy.
I'm just talking about it, so.
I-
And I don't think we were, when you vote
Be
yes,
honest.
means no, and
Truth
no
and
means
evidence.
Yes.
But I just wondered, if it goes on the ballot, and does that mean that you, at that point, you would approve of it? That's the reason it's on there, or you're just gonna let the taxpayers decide?
I would say that probably most of the time, if I feel that it needs to go to the ballot, I would probably be leaning towards supporting, but I'm not saying that 100%, because I've seen things go on that I knew was the right thing for the voters to choose on, and I didn't vote for it. I mean, it depends on your opinion where you stand on certain things.
I think the uninformed voter would probably think that it was needed if it was on the ballot. And that's why these levies keep passing, because they
How many-
trust the commissioners to only put things on the ballot. I mean, they don't even think that through that far,
Right.
but just, they think, well, we really need this, and so we should vote yes, because we're good citizens.
Well, and I don't totally agree with that philosophy, but there are a lot of uninformed voters. I'm sorry, I mean, you guys know it, I know it, we'll be going to the polls, somebody's asking me, what about this issue? Well, if you're asking about the issue going to the poll,
Don't vote.
Don't vote.
how can I educate you?
But they will, they go,
I usually say, well, what's your
All
question? So, I'm all for not putting anything before the people, trust me, but there's certain times that we don't have an option.
Well, usually when it looks like a tax, most people say no.
Mhm.
It's that simple.
Mhm.
They don't have any more money than they had yesterday, and the bottom line is the government wants more money, and they say, no, we can't do this. Particularly in town where you're at, when all it is, over 60% of it is all rental property and things like that. Anything that goes on the ballot, it's gonna get passed on to the renters, who pretty soon are gonna have to move out because they can't afford to increase
Hmm?
in rent that the owners have to pay because somebody put something on the ballot.
Well, I totally understand that. I mean, you got, most of our communities in the county are low to moderate income, a large portion of them, and they can't afford more. I understand that. I mean, I see those people. I don't know what the answer is as far as some of the stuff. I guess the key is,
Get the state out of the county.
well, I'd like to just keep our money, not send any up there, and we'll be okay.
Yes, yes.
But I don't think they'll let us do that. I asked about that, and we don't even get a choice in that, so.
Okay, well, thank you for coming.
Thank you both for coming.
And that's the end of the meeting.
Can I say one more thing about 911? That seems to be awful important. I think there's a big part of this that got missed, and this isn't about campaigning, really, it's just factual. I mean, what's happened is you got a lot of politicians in Columbus, I'm just putting it that way, that are running and trying to run for offices, and this is a lot of feel-good stuff, in my view. But what they've created that most people don't understand, they've created a state office of 911, and they've appointed a state 911 coordinator, and all these things that until the last couple of years didn't exist. Now, I don't think we need it. I think we've operated just fine for a long time. That's where this is coming from. The legislature created these things, then empowered a group under that office to create these rules, which have now gone through JCAR and are now in force.
Okay, that was what I was
Right,
asking.
right.
These are just regulations by some
But they're-
government committee.
Right, but they have the
Not law.
force.
Are they
Well,
law? They
Yeah,
were passed
well,
by
the legislature empowered them to create the rules, so, you know.
Have
we-
the rules been passed by the
Yes.
state legislature
No,
or just by?
that's not how it
then
works.
It's not a law?
Yeah, it's not.
It's
law.
not, the law empowered the group to create the rules.
Okay.
So, but
That is
anyway,
the worst kind of government.
I know,
The
I don't
worst.
disagree with
Counties
you.
don't need to obey it.
But
It's not
anyway,
law.
JCAR has approved these rules, they are in force, we have 2 years to comply. And what happens if we don't, of course, they can take our wireless money that she talked about a while ago.
Not if the sheriff won't let them.
Well, they just won't give it to us, which it's ours to start with, but that's the same discussion we're having. They shouldn't even have it to start with, it should be here, but it's not. But the real fear, I'm on the board of directors of the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association as well, and we have fought and argued about this, but, and on several other things too. But what you've got is the state, they don't care what we think. That's the bottom line. They're doing to get elected, and they're doing to create their own coffers on all of our backs. And that's what's happening.
Yeah.
And if we don't comply, so we give up the wireless money, which you're right, money-wise, probably a bad deal. What everybody's afraid of is the liability that comes from that will far outweigh the wireless money. That's the fear. If we don't comply and someone dies or is seriously injured because we didn't have 2 dispatchers and we didn't have the proper call answering times, and all these things we're required to have. If we don't have emergency medical dispatching, which we're now going to be required to have, if we don't do all these things and somebody dies, the county will be writing a much larger check out of a civil suit, and we all know how that works. You don't win those things. It's just that simple. Especially when they can throw out, well, here's what you should be doing, and you're not doing it. That's the real fear. And we all know how many lawyers are living off the taxpayers, let's face it. So that's the real fear.
Do you want to answer them? Do you have any?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't mean to, but that's
I mean,
what's,
Okay.
Joe's correct.
that's
I mean,
what's going on.
The bottom line is, I understand what you're saying, but the liability is if you don't try to comply with these things, it's so large.
They've got their nose where it doesn't belong, I believe, but there we are, you know.
But that's where we're at, is liability. I mean, we
So our
had,
state needs to hear from us. Our state legislators need to hear from us.
And you got 2 representatives here, so you guys?
I mean, I discuss this with them, this stuff all the time. I mean, you know,
Wish they cared what we said.
these unfunded mandates and things are killing us. I totally agree. They're not well thought through. It's a knee-jerk reaction because something has happened and I'm getting enough flack that I need to do something, and I'll give you a prime example. The Sebring and the Flint lead issue in the water industry has, which I'm involved in, has just put a wave of knee-jerk, and legislation just was passed. I mean, and it was fought tooth and nail. I was part of that effort, and they passed it because they were getting enough pressure that they felt they had to do something. And what they're going to do is they're going to get it so that these small systems can't comply. They're backing people into a corner they don't have an option on, and they just don't understand it. So they're making rules, and they're not getting the information from the boots on the street before they make the rules, and that's where we're at. Bottom line. I mean, I think that's the same thing.
That's true on a lot of topics.
Well, I think that's the point Joe was making, that's the point I made. They're making rules that we have to comply with no good data, and we can't afford it.
Well, the citizens need to know about these things
Yes.
before it's too late.
Yes.
You know, Denise keeps us informed about things that are going on, and all you have to do is tell us. Because we make phone calls and we write letters and we go to Columbus, and we'll fight for those things.
Well, you know,
Just tell us.
I know, that's, I guess, when you get caught up in your world trying to deal with all these things, communication's huge, I understand that. And everybody can do a better job of that. I won't disagree with that, but we all get wrapped up in our own little world trying to fight our own little battles, and it's hard to communicate that. I'm the worst one at it, I'm sorry, and I apologize.
It's not your battle, it's our battle.
What do we have? We have these elected officials, you know, they're appointed boards because they don't have the balls, you know, to take responsibility. So I'll appoint a commissioner or board, and it'll be their responsibility to put the rules out and enforce them as enforce the law.
That's how they
It's
got
just
their
all
pay
wrong.
raises. That's how they got their pay raises at state level.
Well,
Well, it's
the one
bad
that-
form of government.
the one thing the best way to fix it is every bill should be one bill. Nothing, no two, no three, and then you have to make a decision on that.
And have consequences for doing things like that, like not being reelected.
I mean, I totally agree, when you get a bill, and the last budget bill was 5,000 and some pages, I mean, you see I was there, I saw the document, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And somebody's gotta sit there and go through that, and then try to remember what they read and decipher it. That's just not right.
You don't have to remember very long. You usually vote on it the same day that they've been handed the bill.
No, I'm talking about the people that have to try to implement it.
You have to pass it before you read it.
I know that.
You're
Thank
done.
you, guys.
Not just on healthcare.